At my mother's birthday party, my 10-year-old daughter called me with a whisper that shattered everything. "Mom, get out of the house, now." I thought I was safe until the very family I turned to for help secretly plotted to rip my daughter away from me. After escaping an emotionally abusive marriage, I returned to my childhood home, hoping for support, only to uncover a betrayal so deep it nearly broke me. If this story gripped your heart like it did mine, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There's so much more beneath the surface, and I'll be telling it all. Stick with me as we uncover the truths families bury and the strength it takes to rise from the wreckage. They say you can feel when something's wrong, that your skin prickles, your gut churns, your body knows before your brain catches up. But on that warm Saturday evening, I felt nothing. It was my mother's 65th birthday, the kind of party where everything looks nice enough but feels hollow, like someone trying too hard to convince themselves they're happy. The smell of store-bought cake frosting, plastic utensils clinking against mismatched plates, a Bluetooth speaker playing Norah Jones on a loop like emotional wallpaper. I smiled through it all. I'd gotten good at that. Smiling, laughing, staying polite, swallowing everything that wanted to rise in my throat. My daughter Lena had disappeared somewhere in the house, probably reading in the guest room or drawing in the den. I didn't worry. I needed the breather, honestly. "Naomi, try the sangria," my sister Sabrina chirped, holding up a plastic cup like she was auditioning for a commercial. "It's Mom's recipe." I nodded and took it, pretending I didn't remember that the last time Mom made sangria, I had been 18 and crying in the laundry room while my father lectured me about disappointing potential. Now I was 32, a single mom, a nurse, a woman who had clawed her way out of a marriage that felt like drowning in a quiet, beautiful house. And somehow I was back here, living under their roof again, because life didn't care about your pride when custody battles, trauma therapy, and a dropped career collided all at once. Still, I had told myself this was temporary, a bridge, a pause, not a prison. I was halfway through forcing a laugh at one of my dad's stories when my phone buzzed. Lena. I blinked. Why would she call me? She was just in the house. I picked up. "Hey, sweetie, everything okay?" Her voice was small, shaking. "Mom, get out. Get out of the house, now." I froze. The room didn't. My sister laughed loudly at something across the kitchen. My mom adjusted the pearls at her neck. The world kept spinning, but I stood completely still. "What happened?" I whispered, heart already pounding. "Please," she said, "just get out, right now." She didn't scream. She didn't cry. It was the quiet in her voice that scared me most. I didn't ask another question. I just moved. Phone still in my hand, I turned and walked through the living room, past the framed family portraits and the smell of birthday candles. I didn't look at anyone. I didn't grab my shoes. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out the front door like I was stepping off a cliff. The late summer air hit me, warm, heavy, too still. I scanned the yard. Lena stood by the driveway. She had her backpack slung over one shoulder, her hair slightly messy, like she'd packed in a hurry. Her face was blank, her eyes locked on mine, not a tear, not a word. I rushed over. "What's going on? Are you okay? Did someone say something?" She shook her head. "Not here. Let's go." I opened the car. We got in. No one saw us leave. Or if they did, they didn't stop us. We drove in silence. My hands gripped the wheel tighter than they needed to. I didn't even know where I was going. I just drove until we hit the old nursery garden lot 5 blocks down, the one that went out of business during the pandemic. I parked, turned off the engine. The silence grew heavier in the stillness. "Okay," I said softly. "We're alone. Tell me." Lena didn't move at first. She just stared straight ahead. Then, in the smallest voice, "They were in the kitchen. Grandma, Grandpa, Aunt Sabrina. I was in the bathroom." She paused. They didn't know I could hear. My blood chilled. She went on, flat and careful, like she had rehearsed it in her mind 12 times before daring to say it aloud. "They said, they're going to send me back to Dad." My stomach dropped. That I'd be better off, that they could make it happen faster if they helped. They said you'd lose custody anyway. I couldn't breathe. "They talked about putting stuff in your bag," she said. "Something bad, like pills. So CPS would get involved." I stared at her. Lena kept going. "There." He said, "If I went back to him, you could go back to your old job. That maybe you'd start sending money again. Grandma said you're not useful anymore." My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. "They said you're not okay, that you cry too much, that I take up too much space, that the house used to be quieter before. My little girl, 10 years old, sat in my passenger seat carrying the weight of betrayal I hadn't even smelled in the air. I didn't want to wait," she added, "so I packed what I could. I left. I called you." I looked down. In the footwell was her small purple backpack. Sticking out the side was my phone charger. She had remembered my damn charger. She had remembered my damn charger. I wanted to scream, to vomit, to cry, but I did none of those things. I turned the key, pulled out of the lot, and kept driving, not toward home, because it never really was. Just away. From now on, away would have to be enough. I used to think abuse had to leave bruises to be real. It took me years to understand that silence could be violent, that someone didn't have to hit you to hurt you. They just had to wear you down until you didn't recognize your own reflection anymore. That was Mark. When we first met, he was charming in that polished, soft-spoken way that makes people believe he's a gentleman. A surgeon, confident, respected. When he smiled at me, it felt like light through stained glass, soft, warm, and holy. But light can blind you too. We married quickly, too quickly. I was 24, ambitious, tired of being alone. I was working double shifts at the hospital. He said he admired my drive, said he'd support my career, said he wanted a family that was built on respect. What he really wanted was control. It started small. A raised eyebrow when I bought a dress he hadn't seen first. A long silence when I worked late without texting. A passive-aggressive comment about my parenting, just loud enough for me to hear, but quiet enough for him to deny. I gave him the benefit of the doubt again and again, until one night he didn't just raise his voice, he raised the bottle. He didn't throw it at us. He would never admit that. But it hit the wall 5 inches from Lena's tiny body. She dropped the mug in her hands. Shards of ceramic and juice exploded at her feet. She didn't scream. She just flinched. And I broke. Not in the loud, dramatic way. No sobbing, no shouting. Just a quiet, determined crack right down the middle of everything I'd been holding together. I packed 2 bags in silence. One for me, one for Lena. And I walked. I didn't stop to argue. I didn't wait for an apology. I just left. At 2:13 a.m., barefoot, breathless, and holding my daughter's hand so tight her fingers turned white, I went back to the one place I had sworn I'd never need again, my parents' house. I knocked. My mother opened the door in her robe and pearls, like she'd just stepped out of a vintage magazine. She looked at me, then at Lena, then at the bags. "You're back," she said flatly, like I was a package that had been returned to sender. No embrace, no questions, just a silent nod and a step aside. We moved into the guest room upstairs. At first, I told myself it was fine. It was temporary, a reset button, a bridge to something better. But bridges only hold if the foundation is solid. Mine was already crumbling. I'd been the successful daughter for years, the one who bought them a trip to Bermuda, paid their property tax during that unexpected emergency, covered Sabrina's kids' school supplies without asking. I'd been the golden goose. But geese don't shine when they're not laying. Now I was broke. Between jobs, a single mom with trauma bags heavier than my luggage, and suddenly I wasn't so golden anymore. The cracks showed in little things. My mom sighed every time she looked at the grocery receipt. My dad accidentally brought up the electric bill during dinner. Sabrina loudly mentioned how some people were just freeloading off other people's generosity. I smiled. I bit my tongue. I said thank you. But Lena, she saw it all. Her drawings, which once lived proudly on the fridge, were torn down after a day. She was told to use her indoor voice when she laughed too loud watching cartoons. One afternoon, I caught her sitting on the stairs, clutching her sketchbook, too scared to go into the kitchen. "I'll wait till they're done," she whispered. "Done eating, done judging, done breathing the same air as her." My heart broke a little every day, but I kept saying it to myself like a prayer. This is just temporary. This is just temporary. But Lena knew. Kids always know. She began spending more time upstairs, talking less, drawing more wolves, asking me if we could get our own place soon, asking less and less about her old school, her old friends, her old room. Because she knew she wasn't going back, and deep down, so did I. Still, I tried to be grateful. I tried to pretend we weren't just tolerated. I convinced myself that sacrifice was noble, that family meant forgiveness, and that this was better than being alone. I didn't realize that sometimes being surrounded by the wrong people is lonelier than silence. Until that night at the birthday party, until Lena made that call, until the moment my daughter, the one I fought so hard to protect, became the one to protect me. And suddenly, everything I had been suppressing, every "it's fine" I had whispered into my own reflection, erupted into truth. They never loved us for us. They loved what we gave them. And when we stopped giving, they started planning how to take everything back, even if it meant destroying me, even if it meant betraying a 10-year-old girl who just wanted to be safe. There's a past I tried to leave behind, but it never really let go. It watched. It waited. And now it was coming for blood. The knock came at 9:07 a.m., just as I was pouring cereal into a chipped bowl, and Lena was brushing her teeth with her cartoon playlist humming in the background. I opened the door half-dressed, still in Jared's oversized hoodie, and standing there were two women, one with a clipboard, the other with a badge. Naomi Ellis? The first one asked. I didn't need her to finish the sentence. I already knew. We received a report. Of course you did. They walked through the door like they were entering a crime scene, eyes sweeping the living room like I had meth stuffed in couch cushions. Jared appeared from the kitchen, holding a whisk and a coffee mug shaped like a dinosaur, blinking like he'd just stepped into a nightmare. They asked questions, took notes, inspected Lena's room, opened our fridge, even checked the bathroom cabinets. I answered everything with a steady voice and a stomach on fire. Lena stood behind me, clutching her stuffed wolf. She didn't say a word by the time they left, promising to follow up. My hands were shaking. I vomited in the bathroom sink 5 minutes later. I didn't have to ask who reported me, but I did anyway. And when the caseworker said, "It was your parents," I just nodded like someone had said the sky was blue. No surprise left in me. That night, I sat at Jared's kitchen table, hollowed out like a shell, while he silently passed me a mug of tea and slid his phone across the table. It was open to the contact info of a lawyer. You need firepower, he said. Now. Jared had been my best friend since the 5th grade. We never dated, never crossed that line. But somehow, in the middle of my unraveling, he'd become the one person who never asked questions and always had a spare toothbrush and an open door. I didn't cry. I didn't even thank him. I just nodded and made the call. The lawyer, Maya Rowe, was sharp, fast-talking, and cutthroat in the best possible way. She had eyes like a hawk and a tone like a scalpel. Within an hour, she had filed emergency paperwork for a custody review. What we're dealing with, she said bluntly, is a coordinated attack. My ex-husband, Mark, had filed for full custody. My parents and my sister, Sabrina, had all submitted affidavits, claiming I was emotionally unstable, unemployed, and living with a strange man in an unsafe environment. Strange man, Jared muttered. I've been feeding their granddaughter pancakes and wiping her tears for a week. Maya didn't blink. They don't care about truth. They care about control. I felt like I was suffocating in betrayal. These were the people who smiled in my face and stabbed my back so cleanly I didn't even bleed at first. They're playing you as a threat, Maya said. But if Lena speaks, that changes everything. The days leading up to court were a blur of paperwork, panic, and long, quiet nights with Lena curled into my side, breathing like she was afraid of being forgotten. Jared made grilled cheese and reminded me to eat. He kept the lights low and the volume lower, and somehow the world didn't fall apart until court day came. I walked into that courtroom holding Lena's hand, wearing my best secondhand blazer, and nerves spun so tight I thought they'd snap. Mark sat on the other side in a tailored suit, his expression calm and confident. My parents sat behind him, like loyal spectators at his game. My mother's lips were pursed. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. Censura. Sabrina was beside them, holding a notebook like she was about to give a TED Talk. I had never felt so alone until I turned and saw Jared sitting behind me. He gave me a single nod, steady, grounding. I held on to that look like a life raft. The first half of the hearing was brutal. My parents testified that I was erratic, withdrawn, and overwhelmed. My mother said I cried often and refused to accept help. My father claimed I isolated Lena and was too proud to admit she was struggling. Sabrina added that I was emotionally fragile and possibly depressed, citing the time I forgot to pick up cupcakes for her son's birthday As proof I was unfit to parent, Mark's lawyer painted him as a doting father, patient, responsible, the real victim in my breakdown. I sat there silent, hands clasped so tightly they turned red. They made me sound like a ticking bomb wrapped in motherhood, like a woman so unhinged she might leave her daughter in a Walmart parking lot and call it growth. When it was my turn to speak, I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The judge gave me time. I looked at Lena. She gave me a tiny nod, and somehow that was enough. I left because he scared her, I said, my voice shaking but clear, because he threw a bottle, because she flinched, and because I couldn't pretend it was okay anymore. Mark didn't look at me. Then the judge called Lena to the stand. I watched her climb up, legs swinging, eyes wide but steady. She looked so small and so sure. And when they asked her where she wanted to live, she didn't even hesitate. With my mom, she said, because she listens, because I feel safe. Then she told them everything, the plan, the whispers in the kitchen, the threat to plant pills, the idea of sending her back to Mark so I'd start sending money again. You could hear a pin drop. I couldn't cry. I couldn't breathe. I just sat there, stunned. And in that silence, the tide turned. Everything they'd built, every lie, every alliance, began to fall apart. Because the one voice they hadn't counted on was the smallest one in the room. And it was the one that mattered most. You never forget the sound of your child's voice when they choose to stand for themselves. Not beg, not plead, but stand. Lena's sneakers barely made a sound as she walked toward the witness stand, her wolf plushie tucked firmly beneath one arm, her chin tilted just slightly upward like she'd practiced in the mirror. She wasn't wearing anything special, just a soft blue dress and that tiny silver moon necklace Jared gave her for courage. I wanted to rush up there and wrap her in my arms. I wanted to protect her, shield her. But she wasn't the one who needed protecting now. She sat down, legs too short to touch the floor, and looked straight at the judge. I want to live with my mom, she said. No stuttering, no hesitation, just truth, steady and unshaken. The room fell completely still. The judge leaned forward gently. And can you tell me why, Lena? She nodded. Because she listens to me. She doesn't yell. She doesn't scare me. She makes me feel safe. Mark shifted in his seat. What about your father? The judge asked, neutral but curious. Lena's eyes flicked over to him, then back to the judge. Neutral but curious. Lena's eyes flicked over to him, then back to the judge. Hitz gets mad fast. He shouts. He threw a bottle once, not at me, but it broke. I was close. The judge's pen stopped moving. And that made you feel unsafe? He asked softly. She nodded. Yes. Then came the question that mattered most. Has anyone else made you feel uncomfortable, sweetheart? Lena hesitated, looked down at her hands, then up again. My grandma and grandpa said they wanted me to live with Dad, she said. They said they could help make it happen. The room seemed to shrink. They were talking in the kitchen. I was in the bathroom. They didn't know I heard. The judge tilted his head. What exactly did they say? Lena took a breath so deep I saw her shoulders lift. They said they'd plant something in Mom's bag. Maybe pills. Then call CPS. And then I go live with Dad, and Mom would have to go back to work. They said she wasn't helpful anymore, and the house used to be better when it was just them. I heard someone gasp. maybe the clerk, maybe the bailiff, maybe me. I couldn't breathe. Lena just kept going, each word clearer than the last. They said if I lived with Dad again, they'd get money. They said it like I was a way to get her to earn again. She looked straight at the judge, eyes glistening but not spilling over. I don't want to go back to that house. I don't want to live with him. I want to stay with my mom. And just like that, the courtroom cracked open. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Sabrina sat frozen. My father's face went red, then pale. But the real unraveling happened during recess. I had just stepped into the hallway with Maya, trying to steady my breathing, when I saw Mark. He was standing too close to my mother, speaking low but sharp. His hand gripped her wrist tight. Her eyes widened. She yanked away, stumbling a step back. My father jumped in, placing himself between them, chest puffed out like a worn. Mark's jaw clenched. He muttered something under his breath, then turned and stormed off down the corridor, his expensive shoes slamming the tile with every furious step. My mother looked shaken. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. They never returned to the courtroom. When the hearing resumed, Maya came out swinging. She introduced transaction records. Bank transfers from Mark to my parents' joint account over the last 6 months. Big ones. Vacations, car payments, that espresso machine they won in a raffle, bought by him. The witnesses were incentivized, Maya told the judge. This was a coordinated effort to misrepresent a mother and manipulate a custody decision for financial gain. The judge asked if we'd like to pursue criminal charges. I shook my head. I just want my daughter. And finally, I got her. Full custody. No visitation. No contact. Mark walked out of the courtroom, red-faced and humiliated. He never looked back, neither did I. When it was over, I turned to Lena. She was still holding her wolf. "You did good," I whispered. She smiled, just a flicker, and said, "I just told the truth." That night, back at Jared's house, we didn't talk much. He made grilled cheese and tomato soup. Lena drew in her notebook, another wolf, but this one was standing tall, her cub beside her, both of them howling at a bright full moon. They weren't hiding anymore. Neither were we. 1 year later, I still wake up before the sun, but not because of panic or dread. Old habits, I guess. Trauma teaches your body to expect the worst, even when the worst is over. But these days, when I roll over in bed, the first thing I see is Lena's wolf plushie sticking out from beneath the comforter. Its ears a little more ragged, its fur smudged from being loved too hard. And beyond that, Jared, his mouth slightly open, hair a mess, one leg sticking out from the blanket like he lost a wrestling match with sleep. Home, not the kind I ever imagined, but the kind that holds. Lena giggles again now, not forced, not afraid, real laughter. She sings in the shower, draws wolves that win every fight. Sometimes she falls asleep on the couch next to Jared while he helps her build cardboard castles or pretends to lose at Mario Kart. He never tried to replace anything. He just showed up again and again. And somehow that was enough. I got a new job too. It's not flashy. I'm not in an ER anymore. I work in a community clinic that treats low-income families. The hours are flexible. The patients are real. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm doing something that matters without having to bleed myself dry. We have a little rental house now. Yellow siding, a porch with a wobbly swing. Lena planted lavender by the steps. Jared fixed the back gate with duct tape and pride. It's ours. Not long ago, on a quiet Saturday morning, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and there they were. My mother, holding a plate of pancakes wrapped in foil, my father standing stiff behind her, their smiles thin, brittle, uncertain. We thought maybe it was time, my mom said, to talk, to make things right. I didn't say a word, but Jared stepped up beside me. No rage, no theatrics, just calm certainty. You need to leave, he said. Now. From behind his leg, Lena peeked out. Easy. She didn't say anything, but she nodded, and just like that, they turned and walked away. We haven't seen them since. I've heard through whispers that things are hard for them now. Financially, socially, people found out what they tried to do. Neighbors, church friends, bridge club. Apparently, betrayal doesn't go over well with the people who once praised their family values. I used to think closure would feel like fireworks, like some grand final confrontation. But it turns out closure is quiet. It's watching your daughter fall asleep between you and the man who stayed. It's folding laundry while music plays in the kitchen. It's eating pancakes made by someone who never once asked for anything in return. I don't cry anymore, not because I'm stronger, but because I've finally stopped begging people to love me the way I needed. Family isn't blood. It's who stands beside you when the whole world falls apart and stays while you piece yourself back together. Our house isn't perfect, but it's peaceful. It's real. It's ours.